Plaid and the Lib Dems. So will she confirm it's the two fabled Labour governments who simply cannot work together who are just making the cost of living and unemployment worse in Wales?
Sarah Stake.
Wages are up. Wages are up. Inward investment is up. Inactivity is down on the year. Unemployment is down on the year. And we've had 6 cuts in interest rates so that families taking out a new mortgage are £1,400 a year better off than they were under the Tories.
Sean Davis.
Number 7, sir.
Minister.
As two governments, we are committed to working together to keep cross-border arrangements fair, transparent and patient-centred. I'm proud that last year's spending review saw the largest financial settlement in the history of devolution. Working in partnership, we will fix the NHS and make it fit for the future.
John Davis.
Mr. Speaker, the incredible Lincoln Davis Cancer Charity provides life-saving and life-changing cancer care, working with the NHS to support patients across Wales, Telford and wider Shropshire. The charity and the NHS has plans to double capacity of cancer treatment. I am proud to support this campaign. Will the Secretary of State and the Minister meet with me to discuss how she, the Welsh Government and the Welsh NHS can work together to double cancer treatment across our area?
I thank my honourable friend for raising the important work of the Lincoln Davis charity. I understand their appeal is seeking to raise £5 million to grow cancer care awareness in his area. This government is committed to catching cancer earlier and treating it faster. And I'd be very happy to meet my honourable friend to discuss the charity's fundraising campaign.
There you go.
Paris Health Board has been categorising the needs of its patients based on cost rather than on their clinical need, and that's causing a real problem for the Robert James and Agnes Hunt Orthopaedic Hospital in my constituency and the associated Headley Court Veterans Centre, because they need to prioritise patients based on clinical need and not on whether Paris Health Board will pay for them this year. What is the Secretary of State for Wales doing about that problem with Paris Health Board? So we're treating patients based on their clinical need and in a way that my hospital trust can manage.
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for raising this, and I certainly can write to her with the details on the Powys Health Board and what we're doing, but I can assure her that this government is committed to working with the Welsh Government to ensure cross-border arrangements are fair and transparent and focused on patient needs. This is two Labour governments working together in partnership and delivering together.
Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, may I extend a warm welcome to the President of the Storting, the Norwegian Parliament, and his delegation, who are with us in the gallery today. We start with questions to Prime Minister Dr. Jeevan Sanda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 1.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In recent days, I've spoken extensively to our international allies, including European leaders and others, the US and NATO. We will continue to engage constructively to resolve issues, particularly relating to international security, applying the principles and values that I set out on Monday. Mr. Speaker, in addition this week, the Government has announced a landmark investment to support children with special educational needs, overhauled our water system, and today launched a £15 billion plan to create warm homes. At home and abroad, this Labour government is delivering for the British people. This meeting I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We face an affordability crisis in this country. In the short term, our dependence on fossil fuels leads to a rise in energy bills, and in the longer term, the aftershocks of Thatcher mean there are not enough good non-graduate jobs. And that's why today's Warm Homes Plan is such good news. Making life affordable, batteries, solar, home insulation, getting bills down, wages rising, making life affordable. But we must go further. So can I ask the Prime Minister, they would do even more to make sure that life is affordable for my...
The Prime Minister.
Can I thank my honourable friend? I know how much he cares about making life affordable. Mr. Speaker, we're taking £150 off energy bills. That's £300 for the 6 million poorest families, including almost 3,700 households in his constituency. The Warm Homes Plan we're announcing today is the biggest ever public investment in upgrading British homes. It will lift 1 million households out of fuel poverty, tackling the cost of living. That's the difference a Labour government makes.
Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, can I welcome the Prime Minister following our lead on children accessing social media? In particular, can I thank the Shadow Education Secretary, 61 Labour MPs and the Greater Manchester Mayor for forcing him to think again. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and I agree. The future of Greenland should only be decided by the people of Greenland. When the Prime Minister made this point to President Trump on Monday, did the President agree or disagree?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, engaging constructively on international security matters hugely, particularly when it comes to security in the Arctic, and that's the context in which this discussion is going on in relation to Greenland. As we engage constructively, I have made my position clear on our principles and values. The first of those is that the future of Greenland is for the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone. The second is that threats of tariffs to pressurise allies are completely wrong. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to engage constructively. I've had many international calls in recent days, and the Prime Minister of Denmark is coming to the United Kingdom tomorrow for bilateral talks. But I do want to be clear with the House. I will not yield, Britain will not yield on our principles and values about the future of Greenland under threats of tariffs. And that is my clear position.
Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very glad to hear the Prime Minister say that. We all know that the people of Greenland do not want to be ruled by America. But does he agree that just as those in Greenland should decide their own future, so should the Chagossians?
Mr. Speaker, I've made out my position on Greenland absolutely clear on Monday and a moment ago. President Trump deployed words on Chagos yesterday that were different to his previous words of welcome and support when I met him in the White House. He deployed those words yesterday for the express purpose of putting pressure on me and Britain in relation to my values and principles on the future of Greenland. Mr. Speaker, he wants me to yield on my position, and I'm not going to do so. Given that that was his express purpose, I'm surprised the Leader of the Opposition has jumped on the bandwagon. I had understood her position. Mr. Speaker, I had understood her position to be that she supported the government's position on the future of Greenland. Now she appears to support words by President Trump to undermine the government's position on the future of Greenland. She's chosen naked opportunism over the national interest.
Mr. Speaker, we'll note that when I asked him what the President told him, he couldn't tell us. Now he expects us to believe he knows what's going on in President Trump's mind. Let me remind him, his Deputy Prime Minister, then Foreign Secretary, used to say that if President Trump didn't like the deal, it wouldn't go ahead. And let's look at what President Trump actually said. The Chagos deal is an act of great stupidity and a sign of total weakness. We didn't need President Trump to tell us that. We've been saying this for 12 months. And let's remind the Prime Minister, President Trump thought that we were doing this, that the Prime Minister is doing this for money. The Prime Minister is giving away territory we own and paying £35 billion for the privilege. Why doesn't he just scrap this terrible deal and put the money into our armed forces?
Prime Minister.
The words from President Trump were expressly intended to put pressure on me to yield on my principle. What he said about Chagos was literally in the same sentence as what he said about Greenland. That was his purpose. And the future of Greenland is a binary issue that is splitting the world at the moment with material consequences. I've been clear and consistent in my position on the future of Greenland. The future is for Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone. The Leader of the Opposition has taken 3 positions in 10 days. 10 days ago, she said Greenland was, in her words, a second-order issue. 4 days ago, she said she supported our position on Greenland. Now she's backing arguments intended to undermine our position, Britain's position on Greenland. This is an important national moment, and yet again, the Leader of the Opposition has shown she is incapable of rising to it.
I've already told him we agree on Greenland. I'm asking about the Chagos deal. That money, that £35 billion, should go to the armed forces. Mr. Speaker, the world is changing. We are in a very different place, the most dangerous international environment since the end of the Cold War. Last week, the head of the armed forces, not me, the head of the armed forces warned that our military faces a £28 billion shortfall. Is he right?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud we're spending more on defence than any time since the last Labour government. The Strategic Defence Review is back the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War. That's £270 billion this Parliament, making defence an engine of growth. That is a stark contrast. Ben Wallace, the longest-serving Conservative Defence Secretary, openly admitted that under their watch our armed forces were hollowed out.
Order. Mr Bowitt and Mr Cartledge. It is continuous week in, week out, and there's a couple over here who will also be going out for a cup of tea with you. Please, calm it down, or you know the consequence. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, they shout on a Wednesday and they defect on a Thursday. The loudest shouter used to be the former Shadow Justice. We should take a note of who's shouting most loudly this week.
Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister wants to talk about defections. Let me tell him that when I had someone undermining my party, I sacked him. If he sacked... Mr. Speaker, if he sacked...
We're going to get through this Prime Minister's questions. I want to hear the Leader of the Opposition and I want to hear the Prime Minister. Those who don't may leave the chamber. Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, we all know that if he sacked everyone undermining his party, his front bench would be empty. But these questions I'm asking, jokes aside, these questions are about our national interest. We support our armed forces in every possible way. Later today, my party will vote to protect our veterans from unfair prosecution. He is ordering his MPs to vote against them. In our national interest, and for the sake of all the brave people in the armed forces, past, present and future, will the Prime Minister do the right thing and vote in support of our veterans, not against them?
Mr. Speaker, she's claiming strength. She read the guy's defection letter and then at that point decided to sack him. What was she going to do? Correct the typos and give it back to him? She should have sacked him when he made disgraceful comments about faces in Birmingham, and she failed to do so. And she smiles, saying it's a good thing she's cleared out, a good thing there's fewer Tory MPs. The rest of the country agrees with her completely in relation to that. on the question of veterans protection, under the last government, they passed legislation which was struck down, leaving our veterans utterly exposed. We're putting in place proper measures to protect them.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister wants to talk about leadership. Three of his own cabinet ministers told the Times on Saturday that he needed to learn from me.
Order! I'll tell you now, I'm having no more. Do we understand each other? Thank you. Kemi Badenoch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But back to the national interest. Instead of acting in it, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister just tries to get through the day. On the Chinese spy hub embassy, he's too weak. On Chagos, he's too weak. On funding for the armed forces, he's too weak. On protecting our veterans from prosecution, he's too weak. Yes. Mr. Speaker, I will support the Prime Minister when he does the right thing. But time after time, this Prime Minister has done the wrong thing for our country. Isn't the truth that he is too weak to stand up for our national interests?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've spent the week working with our NATO allies to protect our national security and ensure we're having unity in NATO. That's a matter of national importance. She's utterly failed to rise to the occasion and show the solidarity she could have shown in this House. She spent the week trying to hold together what's left of the Tory party. And she says I should learn from her. She has no judgment. Only a week ago, she was saying in relation to Greenland, she shrugged and said it's some second-order issue. Terrible judgment. Then she flip-flopped with 3 different positions in 10 days on Greenland. She said Liz Truss's mini-budget was 100% right. She said last week she was 100% confident there'll be no more defections just before the latest defection. I'm beginning to think her judgment isn't 100% reliable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. NHS waiting lists in Birmingham are down by almost a quarter under Labour and still falling. That's more than 28,000 people no longer stuck waiting for essential treatment. Yes, there are challenges still, but they are being addressed and progress is being made. Does he agree that this progress must be sustained, including by reducing ambulance waiting times?
Minister.
I'm pleased to confirm, Mr. Speaker, that last week saw the second biggest fall in NHS waiting times for 15 years. Waiting lists down by more than 300,000, recruitment of GPs an extra 2,900, and ambulances are arriving nearly 15 minutes faster this winter than they were last year. There is much more to do. That's why we're delivering the biggest upgrade to our ambulance fleet for many years. That progress has been made possible by Labour's decisions that were opposed by the parties opposite.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We remember how Tony Blair ignored warnings from these benches and tied himself to an unpopular American president and a disastrous foreign policy, while close allies like Canada and France looked on in horror. With Donald Trump increasingly acting like a crime boss running a protection racket, threatening to smash up our economy unless he gets his hands on Greenland, will the Prime Minister avoid Blair's historic mistake, take our advice this time, and join Prime Minister Carney and President Macron in standing up far more strongly to President Trump?
Prime Minister.
Well, he clearly isn't listening. I said I will not yield on the principles and values that I uphold, this country upholds in relation to the future of Greenland. But the relationship with the US matters, especially on defence, security and intelligence and nuclear capability, also on trade and prosperity. Mr. Speaker, whilst he's trying to get sound bites, we mustn't forget a war is raging in Europe. It is in its 4th year. The Russians are raining bombs down on Ukrainian civilians day and night. Temperatures were -20 in Kyiv last night. 60% is without power. People are erecting tents to keep themselves warm. We have to work with our allies, including the US, on security guarantees to make sure we can do what we must do in relation to Ukraine. Now, that does not mean We agree with the US on everything. And I've been absolutely clear on my position on Greenland and my position on tariffs. But it is foolhardy to think that we should rip up our relationship with the US, abandon Ukraine and so many other things that are important to our defence, security and intelligence.
Of course, we're not arguing that, Mr. Speaker. We're arguing he follows France and Canada, our close allies. But here's one thing that we can agree on, Mr. Speaker, that the UK strengthens our defensive capabilities, like the Prime Minister said earlier. But, Mr. Speaker, the government is going far too slow in investing in our defensive industries. It hasn't even published the defence investment plan that was promised last autumn. And that delay is putting critical industries like helicopter manufacturing based in Yeovil at risk. Putin is waging a war in Europe. Trump is threatening to undermine NATO. We have to rearm fast. So why won't the Prime Minister just get on with buying great British helicopters made in the West Country?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's about the cheer across the whole country. Mr. Speaker, we are increasing defence spend to the biggest spend since the last Labour government. We are doing that because of the decisions we took at the budget in relation to the money that's available. He wants more money on defence spending. He wants it faster. What did he do at the budget? Did he stand up and say, I support this? No, he voted against it, against the measures necessary to carry out the upgrade.
Steve Yem.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sadly, on Christmas Day, my constituent Beryl Barrett passed away after tragically falling into an unrepaired pothole, and I'm sure the whole House will wish to share my condolences with the family. In my constituency of Mansfield, there are literally thousands of potholes in our roads which Notts County Council are failing to repair. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that it's time the Council took action to repair our roads? And will he meet with Beryl's family so that we can work together to ensure that no more accidents like this happen again?
Prime Minister.
Can I send my deepest sympathies to Beryl's family, and I will make sure the Roads Minister meets the family at the earliest opportunity. Mr. Speaker, it shows why tackling potholes really matters. We're investing £2 billion in East Midlands to fix the roads and improve local transport. We're also putting in place tough new standards so that councils must prove they're fixing roads properly. And I'm pleased many excellent Labour councils across the country are leading by example.
Dr Ellie Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For decades, our rivers, lakes and seas have paid the price of a failing system, so the Water White Paper is a welcome first step in beginning to set things right. But there's a glaring gap. Agricultural pollution contributes 40% of the pollution in our waterways, but merits only one single page in this white paper. Can the PM tell me why on earth this is the case, and when he will start working with farmers to support river-friendly farming practices and treat agricultural pollution as seriously as sewage pollution?
Prime Minister.
We inherited a real mess on water, and we're taking the most effective and far-reaching measures to deal with it. But I have to say, as someone who stood to lead her party, I wonder what she makes of how her leader is responding to this global uncertainty. Because what he's saying is this is the time, this is the moment to withdraw from NATO. This is the time to kick the US out of our military bases. This is the time to negotiate, hear this, with Putin to give up our nuclear deterrent. I'm sure Putin will be very quick on the line for that one. It's as reckless and irresponsible as their plan to legalise heroin and crack cocaine. That's the Green Party now, high on drugs, soft on Putin.
Can I just say, we don't ask opposition questions. They're coming to the Prime Minister, not the other way around. Right, let us move on. Douglas McAllister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. West Dunbartonshire is set to benefit from record UK Labour government investment. £60 million of local growth funding just announced for the Glasgow City region, to add to the £20 million for Dumbarton Town Centre regeneration. Add to that the £20 million Pride in Place funding for my hometown of Clydebank. and the £1.5 million immediate impact funding. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that this is in stark contrast to the SNP, who abandoned their communities, and demonstrates the difference a Labour government makes to Western Bartonshire and to Scotland?
Well, I'm very pleased, Mr Speaker, we're backing his hometown of Clydebank with £20 million of Pride in Place funding. And just this week we hosted a reception meeting people working hard to change their neighbourhoods across the whole of the United Kingdom. That's Labour delivering on national renewal. And as he rightly says, compare that to the SNP, more interested in squabbling over independence than using a record settlement to fix Scotland's public services.
Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Challenging economic inactivity and supporting the vulnerable across the country is something that we all want to address. So would you be surprised to learn that in Northern Ireland around 11,000 people previously supported by the UK's Shared Prosperity funding programmes will see those programmes cut dramatically, compounded with 400 job losses? So can I ask the Prime Minister, does he support those cuts of those vital programmes? And will he arrange an urgent meeting for me with the relevant decision maker in government and the organisations who have been impacted so that these changes and challenges can be resolved?
Prime Minister.
We've delivered a record settlement for Northern Ireland in the budget to strengthen public services and to kick-start growth. And the Local Growth Fund, designed actually in partnership with the Executive, will see £45 million every year to support local growth. But I'm very happy to make sure that ministers meet him to discuss the particular concerns that he has.
Kirstine.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. 1.5 million women in the UK live with endometriosis, which is a painful and life-changing condition. As chair of the Endometriosis APPG, I met Jessica Smith and Endo Warriors West Lothian to discuss their campaigns for a national endometriosis registry to capture and audit diagnosis, treatment and outcomes. Will he join me to commend the work of Jessica, Endo Warriors West Lothian and Endometriosis UK, and will he meet with me to discuss creating a registry to improve the lives of women living with endometriosis?
Prime Minister.
Well, let me pay tribute to her and all women and others who are campaigning on these vitally important issues. Far too many women are left waiting in serious pain for care, and that's why we're investing £8 million in research on diagnosis, treatment and pain management. I know the Minister for Women's Health will be keen to talk to her about her proposals and the issues, and I thank her for raising it.
Gregory Campbell.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I have a constituent not yet 30 years old, a civil servant who's just been diagnosed with a terminal illness. She has been told she has a very short time to live. Because of her condition, she was given a retirement date, which was just last week. She has not received notification of any actual pension payment and has spent long hours trying to contact Capita. HMRC has claimed that all outstanding documentation has been supplied to Capita in November. I've written to the Chancellor, contacted the MP hotline and Capita. It still remains unresolved. Can the Prime Minister, along with the Chancellor, help to get this action resolved immediately?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for raising this case, and I'm truly sorry to hear about his constituent. If he wouldn't mind following up with the details of the case, I will make sure that it's dealt with urgently on behalf of his constituent.
Neil Coyle.
Mr Speaker, yesterday I welcomed Bermondsey PC Kevin Webster to Parliament after his recognition as Met's PC of the Year 2025. Will the Prime Minister commend Kevin for his local work and that of Southwark Labour Council's amazing nighttime antisocial behaviour team? Will he tell us when they'll have new powers under the Crime and Policing Bill? And will he remind the Met that its access standards require all local officers like Kevin to be a maximum 20-minute walk from their ward, a policy currently going unmet in Rotherhithe?
Prime Minister.
Can I congratulate Kevin and thank police across our country working hard to protect our communities? The party opposite decimated local policing and we're restoring it. There will be 3,000 more neighbourhood police on our streets by spring, an example of the change people will feel this year. Our Crime and Policing Bill will give officers more powers to tackle knife crime, shoplifting and antisocial behaviour. I want officers to have those powers as swiftly as possible. The Tories and Reform voted against them.
After Bladford.
My constituents in Chester South and Eddisbury are deeply concerned by proposed cuts to police community support officers across Cheshire. The Labour Police and Crime Commissioner, Dan Price, was silent on this issue, seemingly content to see numbers slashed across the county until residents and local MPs spoke out. Now he seeks to present himself as campaigning to save PCSOs, whilst proposing to substantially increase the precept, all at the same time as planning to increase spending on his office by £513,000 next year. Does the Prime Minister agree that this represents a failure of leadership and that that money would be far better spent increasing PCSOs on our streets?
Prime Minister.
This comes from the party that broke our criminal justice system, just like the fact they broke our economy and our NHS. They hollowed out local policing. We're restoring it. There'll be 3,000 new officers in spring of this year.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The thug in the White House has shown that he doesn't listen to grovelling or sycophancy. He'll continue to harm British interests, no matter how compliant we are, and, like all bullies, he will always find the weakest link. Will the Prime Minister close ranks with our European allies and commit to retaliatory tariffs?
Well said.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've made our position clear. I've set out my principles. I'm not going to yield on those principles. But as I said on Monday, of course we need to protect our national interest, and we will always protect our national interest. But simply hurtling at the first opportunity into a trade war is going to hurt working people and businesses across the country. And that is why I'm working hard to make sure we do not get to that point, and I'll continue to act in the national interest.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, the Prime Minister may be aware that my local authority in the East Riding of Yorkshire is the lowest funded per pupil for children with special educational needs and disabilities, and that his local authority in Camden is the highest, an inequality he has repeatedly pledged to end. Well, Mr. Speaker, the results are in. Next year, children in my local area will receive just under £1,000. Children in his local area will receive over £3,800. The gap is getting wider. So can the Prime Minister explain to the House why he thinks children in my constituency are worth so much less than the children in his?
We're applying their formula, the one that you put in place in government. We're changing it. Special educational needs is probably raised with me more than any other issue in this House. We're proposing reforms. The issue he's highlighted, the problem he's highlighted...
Order. Sorry, Prime Minister. Mr Holden, as Shadow Secretary of Transport, you'll begin the express train and it'll be out of here.
I think he may be making himself the next candidate for the Thursday defection, because it's oh, maybe it's someone else. Those that shout loudest end up over there. And I thank Reform are supporting our recycling moves, because soon they're going to be a party entirely made up of...
Order, Prime Minister. Mr Holden, I think you need to leave. Badenoch. Prime Minister. OK, Rebecca Long-Bailey.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Police officers in Greater Manchester are facing exceptional pressures as they work to keep our communities safe from horrific terror threats, hate crime, organised crime and regular mass large-scale protests. But despite this, GMP received the second lowest percentage funding increase of any police force under the provisional settlement, leaving it £12 million worse off. Now, I know the Prime Minister will share my concerns, so will he urgently work with the GM Mayor, Deputy, myself and Greater Manchester MPs to ensure that GMP has the funding it truly needs to keep our communities safe?
Here. Prime Minister.
Can I thank her and say I was humbled to visit Greater Manchester Police after the Heaton Park synagogue attack. The professionalism and bravery that they showed was remarkable. Mr Speaker, we've boosted total police funding, and Greater Manchester will receive up to £902 million, an increase of over £31 million. I want to reassure my honourable friend we'll continue to work with her and local leaders to make our streets safe.
Matthew.
Mr. Speaker, my constituency of Melksham and Devizes does not have a minor injuries unit, leaving many to travel far afield to Bath or Swindon to access A&E services. Would the PM please meet with me to discuss the need for an expanded hospital provision in my constituency? Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Thank him for raising this on behalf of his constituents. I will make sure he gets the meeting with the relevant minister to talk through his particular concerns so that we can seek to address them.
Jasmine Qureshi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 14 years of Conservative austerity, councils are finally getting the support they need to deliver for residents. In my constituency of Bolton South and Walkden, under the leadership of Councillor Nick Peel in Bolton and Mayor Paul Dennett in Salford, increased funding is being turned into restoring frontline services, investment in town centres and support for families. Does the Prime Minister agree that the councils need serious leadership and long-term funding certainty to deliver, not short-term protest politics that put services at risk? And will he commit to continuing that support?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank you for a question. Labour's boosting funding for councils that were chronically underfunded by the party opposite. I pay tribute to Labour councils delivering results for her community in stark contrast to the division and chaos we've seen from reform councils wherever they've been elected.
Katie Lamb.
Tens of thousands of people across Kent and Sussex were without running water last week. While the response of South East Water was shambolic, the Staplehurst Emergency Help Team got a bottled water supplier, set up a collection station and delivered water to vulnerable people. Using only volunteers, they supported local people, businesses, farms and care homes with 20,000 bottles of water. Does the Prime Minister think, as I do, that South East Water should be ashamed to be schooled in crisis response by the volunteers of the Staplehurst Emergency Help Team?
Yes.
And has he, like many of my constituents and many of our colleagues, lost confidence in South East Water's Chief Executive?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank you for raising. The situation is completely unacceptable, and we welcome Ofbot's investigation into the company. That is the right thing. The Environment Secretary met company bosses last week to stress the need for accountability, and ministers are continuing to chair daily meetings. But it is totally unacceptable and it needs to be fixed.
Lee Barron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For too long, many of my constituents in Corby and East Northamptonshire have not had access to good, secure, well-paid jobs. We made a commitment in our manifesto that we would change that. You can't grow an economy based on insecure work where from one week to the next somebody doesn't know how many hours they're going to work or how much money they'll be paid. Would the Prime Minister agree with me that all workers should have the hours that they actually work reflected in their contracts so that we can give all working people the security to plan their finances, the security to plan their lives and the security to build a future for themselves and their family?
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm proud of this Labour government delivering the biggest upgrade to workers' rights in a generation. And we're ending exploitative zero-hour contracts, ending unscrupulous fire and rehire practices, plus parental leave and sick pay. And workers will benefit from those rights in April, Mr. Speaker, and they should never forget that Reform and the Tories opposed every single one of them.
Robert Jenrick.
Mr. Speaker, one of the last meetings that I took as Shadow Justice Secretary was with the parents of Lenny Scott. Lenny Scott was an exceptionally brave prison officer. He uncovered corruption in his prison. He left the service, and years later he was hunted down and brutally murdered. Because he died after leaving active service, there was never any compensation paid to the children that he left behind. I know the Prime Minister would want to right this wrong. I wrote to the Justice Secretary privately after I discovered this, and I should say his parents never asked for any support. Would the Prime Minister correct this, ensure that this brave man's children have the support that they need as they grow up without the father that they deserved, and join me in thanking all the brave men and women who serve us in our prison service?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank him for raising this, and I will make sure that it is looked into as a matter of urgency, given the circumstances he's set out.
Fred Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I strongly welcome the government's decision to consult on introducing a social media ban for under-16s, something, Mr. Speaker, that the Tories didn't do in office, and they didn't even support until last week. But the average 12-year-old now spends 29 hours a week on a smartphone, whilst more than 500 children a day are being referred to mental health services for anxiety. These stats are not unrelated. Parents, teachers and members across these benches can see the damage that social media is doing to our young, developing minds every single day. Does the Prime Minister agree that the scale of harm demands swift action and that this consultation must lead to timely decisions?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is an issue of real concern to parents. As a father of two teenage children, I know just how much concern it is. That is why we will have a consultation to look at expert and international evidence to get this right, and we will respond by the summer. And that includes looking at the question of the age that children can access social media and restriction on addictive features. I'm also concerned, as is the Education Secretary, about the screen time use for those under the age of 5. So we'll look at all of those issues and make sure that Ofsted checks enforcement of bans during schools.
Mr. Speaker, the Bertie Arms is a fantastic family pub, but because of the Chancellor's tax raid on local business, they face a 2,000% increase in their business rates by 2029. That means the Treasury will lose £200,000 in tax take, and Uffington will lose the heart of its community. Now, the Prime Minister promised not to put up taxes on working people, so how does he justify a 2,000% tax attack on working family businesses like this pub?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we're working with the sector to put in the necessary support, but I would remind her that 7,000 pubs closed on their watch, and she didn't say a word about it.
Alice MacDonald.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Norfolk is a dental desert, causing real suffering for my constituents. I welcome government action so far, including 21,000 extra urgent emergency appointments. But we are the only region without a dental school. The University of East Anglia is ready to open one. So could the Prime Minister set out what more we will do as a government to tackle the dentistry crisis, and will he back our calls for a new dental school in our region?
Prime Minister.
Well, since day one, she's fought for her constituents on this issue, and I pay tribute to her in relation to that. I agree the University of East Anglia would be an excellent candidate for any additional funded dentistry places available in the future. Mr. Speaker, we're also reforming contracts and making sure dentists spend more time working in the NHS to ring thousands of extra appointments to fix the failure that we were left with.
Final question, Gideon Amos.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Children with disabilities and special educational needs in Somerset will be severely hit if the government goes ahead with removing the remoteness uplift from those authorities. Will the government commit to ensuring that those councils with the largest land area in the country, of which Somerset is one, are properly reimbursed for the cost of remoteness so that children in my Taunton and Wellington constituency do not suffer as a result?
Prime Minister.
Well, we do understand the challenges in rural communities, and we'll look at that as part of the work we're doing on reform.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. Let the front benches change over. Point of order, don't tell a chance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understood that the purpose of Prime Minister's questions was for the Prime Minister to answer questions from MPs, and yet...
Hold on. I've not got the responsibility for the answers from the Prime Minister. I certainly don't want that responsibility. It is up to the Prime Minister if he answers that question. That's why I closed down. He is not there to ask questions of your party. I think we'll leave it at that. I'm not continuing the debate at this stage. Right, we now come to statements. Secretary of State, Ed Miliband.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with permission, I would like to make a statement about the Warm Homes Plan, which we published today. Mr. Speaker, this is a plan focused on the #1 issue facing our country, the cost of living crisis, and on the scourge of fuel poverty which affects millions of families across Britain. Now, at the budget, my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, took an average of £150 of costs off energy bills from April. This winter, we've expanded the warm home discount to a total of 6 million families, and today we allocate £15 billion in our warm homes plan. Mr. Speaker, a more than doubling of public investment in home upgrades compared to the last Parliament. In fact, the biggest public investment in home upgrades in British history to cut bills and tackle fuel poverty. And in making this investment, we turn the page on a lost decade of the last government's failure. Home insulation levels falling by more than 90% between 2010 and 2024. The promise of minimum energy efficiency standards for renters broken. The cancellation of the zero carbon home standard and the repeated failures of schemes like the Green Deal, the Green Homes Grant and the Eco Scheme. And worst of all, Mr. Speaker, our dependence on fossil fuels, leaving us exposed to the worst energy bills crisis in generations. Mr. Speaker, the last government failed time after time. This government is doing the work to put it right. The starting point for this plan is that clean energy is not only the right choice for energy security and reducing emissions, but for cutting people's bills. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, the public agrees. They are showing record demand for technologies like solar, batteries and heat pumps that can save families hundreds of pounds a year. Heat pump sales in Britain have grown by around 50% annually, one of the fastest growing markets in Europe. Last year saw a record number of rooftop solar installations. And the driving purpose of this plan is to ensure those benefits are available not just to the wealthiest, but to families throughout our country at every level of income. The driving purpose of this Labour government to stand up for working people and tackle the affordability crisis. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, let me set out the measures we are announcing in our plan today. First, today we announced £5 billion of public investment to directly deliver home upgrades for low-income families. This will help families living in social housing and low-income owner-occupiers to have warmer homes and lower bills. In setting out this plan, we're abolishing the failed Eco Scheme and making the principled decision that we should fund support through public investment, not levies on bills. And our plan, Madam Deputy Speaker, pays heed to all the evidence that says this funding is best delivered with local authorities and mayors in the driving seat. People, those representing local people, delivering for local people. And at the same time, we recognise the challenges facing suppliers who used to deliver eco, so we'll ensure this extra money is used to help support them. And my right honourable friend, the Minister for Energy Consumers, will convene a working group of contractors, social housing providers and local authorities to oversee this work. Overall, this allocation to tackle fuel poverty is the biggest public investment in tackling fuel poverty in our nation's history. Second, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is a scandal that 1.6 million children live in private accommodation suffering from cold, damp or mould, according to citizens' advice. We on this side believe in a simple principle. If you rent a home, private or social, your landlord has a responsibility to ensure it is safe, warm and affordable to heat. The last government, Madam Deputy Speaker, promised higher standards, and then they ripped up that promise. Today we deliver. By 2030, private landlords will have to upgrade their properties to meet minimum standards of energy efficiency, and we've consulted on similar rules in the social rented sector, tackling the scourge of poor quality rented homes and cutting bills for renters. And I can tell the House that these measures alone will lift over 500,000 families out of fuel poverty. Third, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is right we target help at those most in need. But we know the affordability crisis stretches well beyond those on low incomes. We want to make it easier for all households to cut their bills by choosing a heat pump, solar or batteries. So building on the steps we took at the budget to make electricity cheaper, we're expanding the boiler upgrade scheme, increasing investment every year out to 2030, with for the first time a universal offer of £2,500 for a heat battery or air-to-air heat pump, as well as £7,500 to install a conventional heat pump. But I want to go further. Currently, just 1 in 20 homes in Britain have solar panels installed on their rooftops. We are determined to unleash a rooftop revolution, helping many more families generate their own energy to cut their bills. So I can announce that the government is for the first time ever setting aside up to £2 billion to subsidise zero and low interest loans for solar panels, batteries and other technologies, learning from the successful experience of other countries and meeting the demand of people for this technology. And Madam Deputy Speaker, this is just the first step, with a further £3 billion available for loans and investments over the coming years through our Warm Homes Fund. Fourth, as we upgrade existing homes, we will ensure that new homes are built cheaper to run with solar and clean heating as standard. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is just common sense. People cannot understand why we are building new homes with higher bills. The reason is because they refused to act. We are putting an end to this absurd situation. We will publish the future home standards shortly, and for the first time, solar panels will be fitted as standard in new homes. And alongside the other measures I've set out, this is designed to help treble the number of homes with solar by the end of the decade. Fifth, to make these changes happen, we cannot go on with the old system of accountability and delivery that has frankly failed. A situation where people have to navigate a fragmented and confusing system of home upgrades delivered through a bewildering number of organisations and schemes. And we need to face up to the fact that after repeated failures of the last government to deliver schemes effectively, we need a specialist body with the technical expertise and focus required. So consolidating functions from Ofgem and other organisations and abolishing SALIX, and with no increase in arm's length bodies, we will establish a new Warm Homes Agency. It will deliver impartial advice and guidance, work with local authorities and businesses, oversee government schemes, backed by a reformed system of consumer protection. Mr. Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, we will put an end to the scandalous failure of accountability and regulation and the waste of the public's money we saw under the last government. Finally, we are determined to ensure this rollout delivers not just for consumers but workers too. We're the largest producers of gas boilers in Europe, and there's a huge opportunity to harness this expertise to produce heat pumps as well. Manufacturers are already embracing this opportunity, including Ideal Heating in Hull, Valent in Derbyshire, which I visited last year, and Copeland in Northern Ireland. But currently less than 40% of heat pumps sold in Britain are made in Britain. We're setting a new aim of at least 70% of heat pumps installed in the UK being made in the UK, backed by a trebling of public investment in heat pump manufacturing with £90 million set aside today. Overall, we expect the Warm Homes Plan to support up to 180,000 additional jobs in energy efficiency, heat pumps and heat networks by the end of the decade, creating opportunities for builders, electricians, plumbers and installers, as well as new workers entering the industry. And Madam Deputy Speaker, we will establish a new task force with the TUC, working with business, to ensure these jobs are well paid and highly skilled, with a proper role for trade unions. Because we are a Labour government, we expect the rights of working people to be at the heart of this industry's future. Madam Deputy Speaker, taken together, this is a landmark plan that stands in a great reforming tradition of Labour governments. After 1945 delivering on the promises of homes for the people, modernising the nation's housing stock under Harold Wilson in the 1960s, introducing the decent home standard for social housing in the 2000s. Each Labour government meeting the rightful expectations of working people that the next generation can expect higher standards of living than the last. That is what this government seeks to do in our time. A plan to cut bills for millions, help lift 1 million families out of fuel poverty, and create good jobs. And I commend this statement to the House.
I call the Shadow Minister Andrew Bowie.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I thank the Secretary of State for advance copy of his statement today. Today's announcement is long overdue, an entire year to be exact. During the general election, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Labour Party claimed that they would cut household bills. This announcement should be part of that. Yet, in that time, since the general election and under this Secretary of State's watch, energy bills have not fallen, they have gone in the opposite direction. Energy bills are up by £200 since that election, partly as a result of the Secretary of State's own political choices. We believe there is a greater role in our energy system for home batteries. We support a more technology-agnostic approach to air-to-air heat pumps, and of course we believe rooftop solar is much better than carpeting the countryside in huge solar farms. But the Secretary of State is ignoring the core problem. We are in an electricity price crisis of this Secretary of State's own making. And even if we are as charitable as possible and accept that they reach 5 million households, as they say they will, benefit from this plan, then it does nothing to cut bills for 83% of the country. But those households will all pay much higher taxes because of Labour's budget, including to fund this Secretary of State's £15 billion plan. And those households are struggling with their energy bills now because of the choices of the Secretary of State. So, turning to the specific measures in the plan, his department's own figures show that the public is becoming more sceptical about heat pumps. Between winter 2024 and spring 2025, the share of people saying that they were unlikely to install an air source heat pump increased from 38% to 45%. And if you ask anyone why they don't want a heat pump, they will tell you it's the high upfront cost. Yes, but it's but it's also the high ongoing running costs, which often make them more expensive to run than a gas boiler. There is a serious risk that this government legally binding targets are forcing them to push people into buying heat pumps, but those families will all be locked into sky-high running costs because this government has a political target which is pushing up their electricity bills at the same time. Yet this plan does nothing to address those high ongoing running costs. Instead, last week, the government announced they are locking this country into higher energy prices for decades through the botched wind auction. Just imagine, Madam Deputy Speaker, if there was a plan on the table to cut the cost of running a heat pump by 20% instantly, a cheap power plan that wouldn't involve raising tax on working people to fund handouts, a plan that would axe the carbon tax and scrap the Secretary of State's rip-off wind subsidies to cut bills for every family in this country. Wouldn't that be a much better approach to make heat pumps much more attractive? Next, what steps will his department take to make sure the low-interest loans will provide good value for money? How many homes will benefit from the low and zero-interest loan scheme? And how will it be determined who gets a low-interest loan or a zero-interest loan? On the changes to the minimum energy efficiency standards for rented homes, he will know that the previous government did more than any other to improve energy efficiency standards, with half of all homes having an EPC rating of C or above when we left office, compared to 14% when the Secretary of State left office in 2010. But has his department carried out any impact assessment of what the 2030 deadline will cost landlords, and therefore how much will be passed on to renters in increased rents? His own government's data shows it will cost over £12,000 to upgrade a home from EPC E to C. £12,000 of that will then be passed on to families in increased rents. We cannot ignore all the cost that this government is imposing on the housing sector and the impact that they will have on the cost of living for families in this country. The government's going to set up a new quango, the Warm Homes Agency, to administer these schemes. So can the Secretary of State tell us how much this new quango will cost the taxpayer, how it will be held accountable, and why he decided to spend money setting up a new quango rather than have those functions delivered by his own department that he controls? And finally, the Secretary of State has already been forced by this House to ban Great British Energy from spending taxpayers' money on solar panels when there is evidence of forced labour in the supply chain. Of course, we welcome that. But can he assure the House that he will apply that same ban on slave labour to solar panel installations funded by the Warm Homes Plan? And when will he publish details of how that mechanism will work so that it can be scrutinised by this House? In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, this government is ignoring that affordability crisis the Secretary of State talks about is a crisis of his own making. They are ignoring the fact that they are locking this country into paying higher bills for far longer. If they truly want to encourage people to adopt green technology like heat pumps or EVs, they need to make electricity cheap. That means they could adopt the Conservatives' cheap power plan to cut everyone's electricity bills by 20% and scrap this reckless Clean Power 2030 target, which is locking everyone into paying higher bills for far longer.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's always a pleasure to be opposite the honourable gentleman. Let me just make a few points to him, sort of in the gentlest way I can. Look, first of all, on the cost of electricity, the Chancellor in her budget did more in one decision, which was to transfer the 75% of the renewables obligation to public spending to cut electricity costs, than they did in 14 years in power. The second point is he's shouting about bills. Let me tell him the average bill in 2025 was lower in real terms than 2024, and so was the price cap, as he will know from the figures. And I am incredibly proud that this government, unlike the last government, is taking £150 of costs off bills, thanks to the Chancellor's decision, funded by taxes on the wealthy, and they oppose all of those taxes. And they oppose all of those tax measures. He talks about the renters issue. I mean, I think basically what I heard, which maybe shouldn't surprise me, is that he is actually against the higher standards for renters. He would leave renters, private renters, languishing in cold, damp homes, which is what they did in 14 years in power. We are proud of the decision we're making. I mean, actually, thanks to the brilliant work of my honourable friend, we've actually got a supportive quote from the landlords. I mean, even the landlords want more action than the Conservative Party when it comes to the renters. I mean, if just sort of to amuse the House briefly, you know, I'll even read it out. Ben Beadle, Chief Executive of the NRL. A clear roadmap for the reform of PRS is welcome. So even the landlords are more on the side of renters than the Conservative Party. He asks, why are we setting up the Warm Homes Agency? I'll tell him why. He says, you know, wouldn't it be better to do it within government? Because they presided over a scandalous and shocking disaster in the eco scheme, a mess we are having to clear up. And actually, we are going to reform the system so that we have a proper agency with proper technical expertise to make sure nothing like what they visited on thousands of families across the country ever happens again. In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, I like the honourable gentleman, and I feel a bit of sympathy for him, because he has nothing to say about this issue. Let's just be honest about this. They failed over 14 years, and we're delivering.
Elect Committee Chair Bill Esserson.
Can I congratulate the Secretary of State very warmly on the Warm Homes plan, not least the universal nature of the offer, from support for people in fuel poverty through health co-benefits in addressing cold, damp and mould, to the availability of cheap finance so everybody can take part in the technical solutions available. The eco scheme, which failed so badly, has left a legacy, and can I encourage him to address the concerns among consumers, amongst industry and amongst the workforce, and also not to lose sight of the benefits in reduced bills through insulation, particularly loft insulation. On the subject of cheaper bills, the Select Committee has heard again and again that in particular with the Warm Homes Plan, if people are to benefit to the maximum extent from it, we have to see reductions in the price of electricity and a reduction in the gap between the price of electricity and the price of gas. There are welcome measures. He mentioned them in his statement, the £150 off coming in April being a very, very good start. But can he confirm that more action will be taken on bringing down the cost of electricity so as many people as possible can benefit from the Warm Homes Plan to the maximum extent?
Let me address the questions that my honourable friend asked, and he speaks with great knowledge on these issues. Look, first of all, on the eco scheme, I think he was making reference partly to the installers, and it is important to emphasise the point I made in my statement, which is we want the extra money, which is £1.5 billion allocated at the budget, to help those installers because they are going to face a difficult transition. And I think he raises an important issue. On the cost of electricity, as I said in reply to the opposition spokesperson, the measures that my right honourable friend the Chancellor took in the budget are important for cutting the cost of electricity. And all of the evidence I've seen says you can get with the right tariff, running a heat pump is cheaper than running a boiler. Obviously, we continue to look at whether there are other ways we can bring the cost of electricity down, and my honourable friend is right about that. And just on his point about insulation, I think my maxim here, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the measures that will cut bills the most are what matters to me. I'm not sort of ideological about this, whether it's insulation or heat pumps or batteries or solar, whatever it is that can give us most bang for our buck in bringing down bills.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Pippa Halings with 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And we've been asking for the Warm Homes Plan for Christmas for the past 2 years, so it's very better late than never. Unwrapping it got some mixed feelings. You know, the Liberal Democrats have long called for an emergency home energy upgrade scheme with free insulation and heat pumps, and recently also proposals for low-interest loan schemes like these. So we really welcome this significant investment by the government in low-carbon heating. And it's folly for anyone to think that we can rely on Putin's Russia or Trump's America for the gas to heat our homes. So it's right for the government to help households make this shift. Every solar panel, heat pump and battery install will protect families from volatile costs of fossil fuels and make homes cheaper to both warm and cool, which is a key point too. However, I have to say I do share the concerns of the energy efficiency sector about the balance that is being struck between insulation and electrification. We've seen, as the Secretary of State has said, fuel poverty rise and rates of insulation fall over the last 5 years. And the UK has some of the least energy efficient housing in Europe, leading to serious health problems with cold, damp, Dickensian home conditions. Despite our warnings, there's still no clarity in this plan about what will replace the ECO programme, leaving supply chains in limbo and skilled installers going bankrupt. And this delay, I call this out, could leave us without an operational national fuel poverty strategy over this coming winter. We hope not, and will therefore hold the government to account on this and other things that have been mentioned that are, we need to hold you to account on this as being delayed. The gas and electricity price reform postponed again. Efficiency standards have been weakened for landlords. And whilst we encourage, thank you so much for taking on board the rooftop revolution on the back of Max Wilkinson's solar bill, but the future home standard is still missing in action. We can't afford more values. We welcome this significant investment. There is no time to waste. Thank you, Madam President.
I welcome the thanks, but obviously it's not down to me, but to the Minister. So we must stop using the word you, Secretary of State.
Well, look, I'm always glad to deliver the Liberal Democrats a late Christmas present, Madam Deputy Speaker. I agreed with some of the honourable lady's point, particularly about our dependence on fossil fuels and why clean energy is the way forward to give us energy security and sovereignty in a dangerous world. I want to reassure her on insulation. As I said to my honourable friend, we continue to see a really important role for insulation, but I hope she will agree and members of the House will agree that what matters as we invest public money is what is going to do most to tackle the affordability crisis, and that is our test. So absolutely insulation is a key part of that. On the eco supply chain, just to expand a little bit on what I said earlier to my honourable friend, look, we do recognise, and I know this from my own personal conversations, the issues facing organisations in the supply chain, and that's why in the £1.5 billion extra, which was on top of the 13 billion or so previously allocated in the Warm Homes Plan, we're going to make sure that £1.5 billion is spent through the eco installers to help them make this transition to the new system. My honourable friend is getting to work straight away on a group representing the installers, the local authorities, who are obviously going to be responsible for the procurement and the spending, because we want to do everything we can to help the supply chain.
Collins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm really pleased to see this Warm Homes Plan, as a warm home for everyone was one of my key election pledges. And in my constituency of Morecambe and Lunesdale, Green Rose CIC has been helping people for years with energy efficiency and making their homes warmer. So can the Secretary of State tell me how local experts like Green Rose CIC will be used to deliver this change for our constituents?
Well, I think my honourable friend asked a really important question, and I congratulate Green Rose CIC for the work that they do. We absolutely see organisations like that as central to this plan, working with local authorities, working to give local people advice, also working, and I don't know whether this applies to Green Rose CIC, on our local power plan, which will come out soon, to give opportunities for local community energy schemes as well, because community ownership is a big part of it. I see organisations like that, and it really reflects the enthusiasm on the ground as crucial to this plan.
Harriet Cross.
Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend and the Shadow Minister asked, and the Secretary of State did not manage to answer, about whether or not Chinese supply chains, slave labour supply chains, will be involved in the procurement of any aspect or any part of the solar panels involved in this scheme. Please, can the Shadow State confirm that not a single aspect of this project will come off the back of slave labour and their supply chains?
Well, I have to say to the Honourable Lady, we inherited from them I'll get to the question, the system, and we have raised the standards. We've raised the standards in the solar roadmap. Through the SSI initiative with the solar industry. We've raised the standards through GB Energy, and my honourable friend, the Minister for Energy, is working with colleagues across government to ensure that slave labour is not used in the supply chains.
Holly Billington.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I congratulate my right honourable friend for this Warm Homes Plan. It has been a long time coming, but maybe perhaps a little longer than the members of the opposition are prepared to admit, since I know he and I worked on something very similar way before the Tories then left and abandoned the Warm Homes ambitions that we now see fully fulfilled. 1 in 6 of the households in my constituency live in the current calculation of fuel poverty, predominantly in places like Cliftonville and Ramsgate Town Centre, where incomes are low and buildings are old. Also, incidentally, they tend to be predominantly privately rented. Would my right honourable friend consider revising the fuel poverty calculation to really reflect the truth of how many people struggle to keep their homes warm in winter and cool in summer? Will he also confirm a little bit more about the information that might be available to support the landlords to make this shift, since it actually requires 28% of my residents actually live in private rented accommodation? Will he confirm that he will support an energy social tariff to support the transition to a cheaper and cleaner form of energy in the later?
I think my honourable friend is right about this. Working with the private rented sector to raise the standards is incredibly important, and frankly we can't let the scandalous situation that affects so many private tenants carry on. I think she also makes another important point, though. We know this is a big journey of upgrading the nation's housing stock. There's a very, very long and bad legacy that we've been left. We are determined to make a difference to it.
Mr. Carmichael.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Orkney and Shetland are home to some of the worst levels of fuel poverty anywhere in the United Kingdom, as well as some of the largest onshore wind farms in the country. Solar panels are of limited usefulness to us because it's coldest in the winter, and in the depths of winter we might have as little as 5 hours daylight in the day. What would make a difference to us is meaningful support for community benefit or even community ownership of some of the installed wind farms that we have in the Isles, or an Isles tariff for communities like ours and in the Western Isles. When will we hear something from the Secretary of State on these ideas?
We'll shortly. I thank him for his question, really important question. We're going to shortly publish our local power plan, which is precisely about community ownership that he was talking about. We see that as having a central role. If you look at countries like Germany and Denmark, it plays much more of a role than here. We want to expand it, and we want his constituents to benefit.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It was interesting to hear the Liberal Democrats really struggling to say that they admire this policy, given that they seem to be getting everything that they want from it. And it's also disappointing to see the deserted Conservative benches for this. I offer my apologies to the shadow spokesperson, who is not with allies. But it's disappointing to hear the Conservatives move from being climate change converts to being sustainability sceptics yet again. The Conservatives left our country vulnerable to the energy price spikes, which made the last government have to spend at least £78 billion to deal with the cost of living crisis, whereas this government is investing big, and we've got Europe's biggest ever wind auction announced last week. Now we're seeing clean power from day one, new builds, new power. Does the Secretary of State agree that a major motive for this plan is to cut hundreds of pounds off bills in Bournemouth East to go solar by standard, and that only a rooftop revolution will help bring down bills, but keep bills down in the long term.
I thank my honourable friend for his question. I guess the honourable gentleman on the other side will be wondering where his friends have gone and whether they're going to another political party. Let me say to him, this is absolutely about his constituents. It's absolutely about cutting bills. You know, this is a long-term affordability crisis, and this is a long-term plan to help tackle it.
I have confidence that the Secretary of State is across his brief and doesn't need to be warmed up before a question. So get straight to the question so we can get on to the next member. Graham Ledbetter.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the additional investment in energy efficiency measures. It's a good thing. And I certainly welcome the simplification of the energy efficiency systems that people can bid into, and that can only be a good thing for consumers. It's been a veritable maze. However, the biggest barrier for many of my constituents and people across Scotland is price. They cannot invest in their home if they cannot get a decent price for their energy and deal with the cost of living that is affecting them right now in this moment with the bills that they're getting on their doorstep right now. The North of Scotland has the highest energy prices in the UK. The SNP has put forward proposals for a social tariff. Will the Secretary of State seriously consider those measures and put in place a social tariff to enable people to take advantage of these schemes?
I'd say thanks the honourable gentleman for his question. Just to respond, it's because we recognise the immediacy of the affordability crisis that we took the action we did in the budget, take £150 of costs off bills. It's because we recognise the affordability crisis that we significantly increased the numbers eligible for the warm home discount, which I think is hundreds of thousands more people in Scotland now eligible. I would point out that the Scottish Government has some responsibility here, having cut some of their own schemes in this, but we want to work with the Scottish Government and do all we can to help the honourable gentleman's constituents.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. My right honourable friend has once again pulled quite a rabbit out of the Chancellor's hat, so I congratulate him. He's clearly her favourite Secretary of State. But does he agree with me that we know what happens when we don't rely on renewables? It's the £44 billion that the previous government had to pay to subsidise bills at the same time that our constituents were struggling to pay them. I agree with what my colleague, the chair of the Designated Select Committee, said about we still need to be driving down those electricity costs. But will the Secretary of State tell us, in terms of the skill shortages that we have within the heat pump installation sector, what does he think are the key things we can do to address them, and how many heat pumps should we expect to be installed by 2030?
Secretary of State.
On 2030, 450,000 is the target we set out in this plan. On his point about skills, our skills task force is absolutely designed to do what my honourable friend said, which is to meet the skills needs, the very significant skills needs we are going to have. And I think, just to the first part of my honourable friend's question, I do think the Chancellor deserves real credit for this, because she recognised the importance of long-term public investment, which the last government singularly did not. The easy thing in difficult times is to cut public investment. She didn't do that. She's increased it, and she's investing in this area very significantly.
Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I warmly welcome this plan and the ambition that the government is showing and try and dispel some of the misconceptions on the opposition benches. I'm sure we've all been out knocking on doors in our constituencies, as I was last week in Worcester Park in my constituency. And a lady came to the door in a big jacket, and I kind of let her pass because I thought she was on her way, but she wasn't, because she was in her home in a jacket because she didn't have the heating on, and I'm sure we've all experienced that. So we know how the cost of living crisis is hitting our residents, whether it's in grocery bills, whether it's in the rent, or whether it's in energy costs. Can the Minister give a bit more detail on how we're going to address those energy costs and insulation in the short term, whether there are programmes in here that can be funded for those easy wins, that we can see those leaks and those energy from existing gas boilers come down, whilst the industry spools up by getting the skills to install heat pumps and we get the production lines in progress.
State.
I think what the honourable gentleman said at the beginning of his question is something that will resonate with every member of this House. because it's what so many people are facing, and it's a chronic and an acute cost of living crisis. It's been going on a very, very long time, and that's what makes it really hard for people. On his point about what difference we can make in the short term, that's why the £150 is important, because immediate relief is important. That's why the warm home discount is important and its expansion. And also, I do encourage people watching this and members to encourage their constituents to go to the gov.uk website. People can get to their local authorities, see what schemes are available. There is money available, and we do want to get as much help out as quickly as possible to people. Sometimes this money gets underspent, actually, by local authorities. We want this money to get out and help people.
Peter Swallow.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I wonder where all the Tory MPs are. They can't all be having cosy chats with Robert Jenrick.
Roast dinner.
Can I welcome this...
We do not reference members by their names, but by their constituencies. Get straight to the questions.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I do apologise. I welcome the Warm Homes plan, not only the support it will give for the most in-need constituents in Bracknell Forest, but actually the support for everyone to make important upgrades to their home, including with low and no interest loans for solar panel upgrades. Can I ask my right and honourable friend what thoughts he's given to supporting leaseholders to make sure that they are able to make these changes and aren't held back by freeholders turning down sensible and common sense requests?
Absolutely, we see leaseholders as being eligible for this help. It's very, very important that they are. And I think my honourable friend speaks very compellingly about this issue with his constituency experience. We want as many people as possible to be helped as quickly as possible with this plan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Despite the fact that these plans will not apply to Northern Ireland, I do welcome the aspect of the plans which apply to rented accommodation. Maybe the Minister could confirm whether or not there will be a Barnett consequential for Northern Ireland. But does he recognise that even with these plans, there will still be an upfront cost which will require low-income families to borrow, and that will be an impediment? And secondly, the running costs will still be higher despite what he has done in electricity prices, because that's been offset by the cost of his net zero policies, which cause electricity to be dearer than gas.
I thought for the first time in 20 years we were going to agree completely, but we nearly got there. Three-quarters agreement is better than we've done in 20 years. Look, on the first part of what he says, look, we recognise that there are Barnett consequentials have already been allocated for this, and we would encourage, obviously it's for the decision for the government of Northern Ireland to make their own, the executive to make their own decisions on how they spend their money. We do want the Warm Homes Agency to work with people, with devolved governments as well. And we also want to look at how zero and low interest loan scheme can work across the United Kingdom too. So we want to work as much as possible with devolved governments to help people across the UK.
Anderson.
I particularly welcome the new requirements placed on private landlords, which will be a huge boost to tenants in the Buckingham and Bletchley constituency. My question concerns rural communities who often face high energy costs and other practical barriers, such as the limited availability of those who would install things like heat pumps. So can he set out a bit more detail about how he will be working, his department will be working with relevant local authorities and suppliers to ensure that rural communities like those in North Buckinghamshire aren't left behind?
Next state.
I think my honourable friend asked a really important question, and I want to sort of tell him a nerdy fact, which is, I like nerdy facts. It's in character. Nearly half of the people who've got the boiler upgrade scheme are actually in rural areas, and I think I'm right in saying that a third are off the gas grid. And so I think this tells you something actually about the kind of appetite there is, particularly in rural communities and particularly those off the gas grid, to find alternatives. And so hopefully the continuation and indeed expansion of these schemes will help his constituents.
Dr. Ellie Chowns.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I warmly welcome the publication of the long-awaited Warm Homes Plan. The Green Party has tirelessly campaigned for many of the things in here, a more consistent, nationwide, clearer, straightforward system for people to access support, better inspection and accountability for installers, and of course, solar panels as default on roofs. However, two questions for the Secretary of State. First of all, this is supposed to be a warm homes plan, but there's a lot of focus on energy supply improvements and less than I would expect on energy demand management, insulation, which is crucial to reducing bills. Why is that? And secondly, the scale of this plan is